March 5, 1904, Serbian scientist Nikola Tesla publishes a paper in New York on the formation and nature of ball lightning. He was even able to artificially induce this phenomenon in his laboratory, apparently as a byproduct of his experiments. He thus confirmed several of his nicknames: the Lord of Lightning, the Electric Wizard, or the one who invented the entire 20th century. Tesla was simply a genius who came up with one invention after another, from remote control to X-rays to a weapon called the death ray, but none of them successful enough to make him rich. Yet today he is one of the most important and also one of the most mysterious scientists in history. Nikola Tesla was born to Serbian parents in 1856 in the village of Smiljan, at that time in the territory of the Austrian Empire. Today, the village is part of Croatia, and so the famous scientist is claimed by both Serbs and Croats. Little Nikola is said to have been born in the middle of a storm. From a young age, he had a weakness for electricity. For example, when he first saw a picture of Niagara Falls, he immediately imagined how he could use the huge stream of water to generate electricity. His student years were not easy. He first studied at the Polytechnic in Graz, where he dropped out after arguments with his teachers, then spent a semester in Prague at Charles University. However, he left there due to lack of money. So he started working in Budapest as an ordinary electrical engineer without having completed any higher education. That's when coincidence played a role. The head of his Budapest laboratory gets an offer to work in the Paris branch of a company belonging to the famous Edison, and he takes the young Tesla with him. Then, at the age of 28, he moves from Paris straight to New York, to Edison's headquarters in Manhattan. Thomas Edison, who changed the world with the invention of the light bulb, is now trying to electrify cities with direct current. But Nikola has preferred alternating current since he was a student, so these two won't get along together. After 2 years, Tesla quits his job, supposedly because of unpaid bonuses. He manages to convince a few investors with a spectacular experiment in which he uses alternating current to spin an iron egg so that it stands on its tip. After that, he starts his own company named Tesla Electric Company. 30-year-old Tesla takes the opportunity and works hard. He never gets married because, he says, there are no famous inventions made by married men. By nature, he only needs 2 hours of sleep a day, and so every working day will end at 3 a.m. for the rest of his life. In the field of alternating current, he immediately starts patenting one invention after another. The most famous is the asynchronous induction motor, which in various modifications becomes the most widely used electric motor ever. This success attracts the attention of Edison's biggest competitor, George Westinghouse, who buys all the patents from him and teams up with Tesla. Together, they kick off what would later be called the War of the Currents. It's a dirty game with a ton of money involved and the future of electrification at stake. Edison argues that the alternating current Westinghouse and Tesla transmit through high voltage is deadly and therefore unsuitable for homes, and he tries to prove it in his own way. He demonstrates how alternating current can kill stray dogs, horses, and even an elephant. The situation comes to its peak when Edison proposes that alternating current should replace the rope in carrying out executions, and mockingly calls it Westinghousing. But the economic advantage of alternating current, which can be transmitted over much greater distances using high voltage, is obvious. When Westinghouse and Tesla majestically light up the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, and when they win the competition for the design of a power station connected to Niagara Falls, not only is the childhood dream of Tesla fulfilled, but also the whole war of current is definitely decided for alternating current. At this point, you'd expect Nikola Tesla to become a millionaire, but his sense for business is minimal. He simply doesn't care much about money. He'd rather focus on hundreds of other new ideas, most of which he abandons, some of which he doesn't even publish. For example, he experiments with X-rays before the German scientist Röntgen himself. He develops the first apparatus for transmitting signals by radio waves before the Italian scientist Marconi. He demonstrates the first wireless remote control machine. He launches a boat, which he controls with electric waves to the amazement of the audience. He's not getting much out of it. big money goes to others. He says, "I don't mind them stealing my ideas, but the fact that they don't have any of their own." His obsession eventually becomes researching the wireless transmission of electrical energy. He intends to build a worldwide system by which energy can be freely transmitted without the need for a distribution network. Any light bulb could be turned on without a power cord, and machines would be controlled remotely, including, for example, electric cars. Electricity would be everywhere, and ideally for free. He needs a large space for his experiments, so in 1899, he moves from New York to the Wild West town of Colorado Springs. There, he builds a laboratory where, among other projects, he creates artificial thunderbolts, which is also a kind of wireless transmission of electricity. He also shoots these famous photographs of himself in the middle of a huge discharge, but it's actually a double exposure. Eventually, he manages to trigger lightning bolts up to 40 meters away. However, his experiments blow fuses in a nearby town. Horses get their shoes kicked with electricity, and the only result is that he manages to wirelessly light a light bulb at a distance of only 30 meters. The neighborhood is mad at him, and because it turns out he doesn't pay rent at all, after only a year he has to move back to New York. But even here he doesn't give up. Quite the opposite. It becomes clear to him that an even more powerful power source is needed for wireless transmission. He manages to convince industrialist J.P. Morgan to invest $150,000 to build a monstrosity, which Tesla names the Wardenclyffe Tower. He'll be able to send the world's first radio signal across the Atlantic from a 57-meter transmitter. In reality, he has no such plans. He further continues to investigate wireless power transmission, but without any success. Then a year later, when the Italian Marconi famously sends a Morse code S across the Atlantic Ocean using a simpler and cheaper transmitter, Morgan runs out of patience and cuts off all payments to Tesla. Although Tesla claims that Marconi is using 17 of his patents, he must abandon his tower and sell it to pay off his debts. From now on, Tesla can no longer avoid the label of genius, but somewhat phantasmagoric inventor and weirdo. He is over 50, his lucrative patents have expired, and Tesla's trajectory is heading downwards. In 1909, Marconi wins the Nobel Prize for inventing the wireless telegraph, which angers Tesla, who then sues Marconi. The lawsuits drag on for another 35 years. In between, he lives in hotels that he doesn't pay for, suffers from obsessive-compulsive disorder. For example, all the tasks he does must be divisible by 3, has a panic terror of microbes, women's earrings, or peaches. His best friends are pigeons. He even claims to love one white dove the way that a man loves a woman. The last flourish comes in 1931, when journalists throw a party to celebrate his 75th birthday, and Tesla is congratulated with appreciation by the greatest minds of the day, including Albert Einstein. Tesla appears on the cover of Time magazine and always presents new ideas he's been working on to the world on his birthday. In 1934, on his 78th birthday, he reacts to the rise of Nazism in Germany. He introduces a machine he calls the Teleforce, but the press immediately renames it the Death Ray. It's supposed to be a beam of light that will destroy the enemy's entire air force at a distance of 300 kilometers. He proposes the idea to Britain, the United States, the Soviet Union, and Yugoslavia, but in the end, not a single prototype is built. Old Nikola returns to his pigeons and eventually dies of a heart attack in his New York hotel room in January 1943. He was 86 years old. 2 things are clear about his passing. He lies dead in the room for at least 3 days before his absence is noticed. And 2, his entire estate, 80 suitcases of notes, sketches, and patents, is seized and examined by the FBI for years. Genius, crazy, dangerous, or maybe all of the above. This was the man who, without completing his degree, helped invent the world we live in today.